I'm going to have to take a deep breath as I give my dissertation, as it were, on this particular subject of 911. September 11th, 2001. I just did. I did it before that as well, off camera. This is something, it is sensitive to many. Let me first say this. Let me preface everything by saying this. By no means is my intent in this video to degrade, demean the lost lives of 911. In other words, all of the precious lives that were lost during September 11th, 2001, my heart has always been heavy because that was the greatest tragedy that has ever occurred on U.S. soil to date in recent years. And my prayers have always been for the families of the lost, even to this very day. I am a U.S. veteran of the Army. I am a patriot. But just because I am a veteran and I am a patriot does not mean that I can't see. As hard as it is for some of us to wrap our brains around the possibilities of what actually happened on that fateful day, it is what it is. It's unfortunate that we have to say that there are conspiracies, in the way of theories, I should say, conspiracy theories. And there are conspiracy theories. And people like to brush you off when you start talking about your particular take on 911. They want to call it a conspiracy theory. When are we, who say or claim that we are mature adults, when are we going to stop hiding in the shadows, stand on our own 2 feet firmly on the ground, and call things what they really, really are? I'm not standing before you as a scientist, so I'm not going to use any specific science in this exclamation, if you will, or explanation. But I'm going to point out just a couple things. 911. This is for you to think about. And then please, I'll say it beforehand, please honor us with your comments, whoever you are that's watching this, that's concerned about it, be it the remaining loved ones of someone that's passed away as a result of that incident, or just a citizen in general. But here are some points from research on my part. This is not a conspiracy theory. These are facts. First of all, when the towers came down, there were firemen, EMT, police officers, various other individuals in the hundreds that said that they heard explosions going off sequentially inside the Twin Towers. People both outside the building and inside the building. And it was dismissed. There were two planes that penetrated the Twin Towers, one after the other. And it was said by architectural experts, engineers, and scientists, and chemists, and other experts, and not opinions, but facts, that the steel beams, all of the steel within that structure, the fuel from those planes could never get hot enough to melt that steel in those buildings the way they claim, the government that is, in their official conclusion. He said fuel from a jet, from a plane, does not get hot enough to melt steel like that. And then the buildings came straight down. That is indicative. That is evident of how implosions occur. That is evident of how demolitions are performed. It's odd that they both came straight down. It's interesting. Another interesting thing, I believe it was building 7 or 9, I forget, you look it up, building 7 or 9. As I said, I'm not going to try to be too scientific and specific about that, but we know it was the third building. It fell down the same way, and it was not even hit with a plane. Go figure. Now, getting back to the Twin Towers. These two planes, upon further scrutiny with CNN and various other news organizations, close-in cameras, they stated that they were not even passenger airliners. Should I say that again? They were not even passenger planes. It's been said by one expert account that they were military drones. The configuration was that of a military plane or drone, not a passenger plane at all, neither plane. And then the record stated by several that right before the planes hit the buildings, there was a flash of light that was odd, as if it was being detonated, or that there was a detonation occurring when the plane was hitting the buildings. Now, another thing about 9/11. President Bush, who was the president at the time, he talked about this being a war on terror. And they seemed to be able to find this group of terrorists that were responsible for the Twin Towers coming down. Within a very short period of time, they found this out, this information. And then the conclusion was that Osama bin Laden was responsible for September 11th, the tragedy that is. But what is interesting is that Osama bin Laden used to be a resident in the United States, and that he was trained by the United States, and he went to school in the United States. He was trained by the United States military and or CIA. Okay? And the bin Ladens at one time, when the Bushes, who were into oil, the bin Ladens loaned them some money for their business at one point in history. You do that research on your own. But the point that I'm getting at with the bin Laden situation is this. Bush said that he was the most wanted man in the world because of September 11th and him being the orchestrator, supposedly, of it. But to the dismay of many of us, he turned his attention away from Osama bin Laden and focused on Saddam Hussein, the leader of Iraq, or Iraq for some. Both having nothing to do with one another. So if Osama bin Laden is the perpetrator of the 9/11 incident, why did you take your attention off of him and focus on Saddam Hussein, stating that he had weapons of mass destruction? That's two different subjects, right? They had no tie with each other at all. So you focused the attention on Saddam Hussein along with your military leaders and with your constituency, and you decide to launch a campaign against him because he had allegedly some weapons of mass destruction, even after being told by your UN inspectors that they found none, zero. Even Colin Powell told Bush the same thing. We found none. So President Bush didn't listen. He enacted all of the forces of the United States military, Air Force, Navy, Marines, and Army, to launch a campaign against Saddam Hussein, knowing that the intelligence told him that there were no weapons of mass destruction. So he went into there along with his coalition, the part of the coalition that did want to participate, and he began to bomb, or the United States began to bomb Iraq for months and months and months. During 9/11, September that is, over 3,000 individuals died in that fatal catastrophe. But what is never talked about in the news is that campaign that President Bush launched in Iraq killed hundreds of thousands, hundreds of thousands, hundreds of thousands of innocent men, women, and children. Is that justice? Is that an act of humanitarianism? I'm saying to you that the United States had an agenda. I'm not going to go any further on all of the other things that are unclear about 911, but I'm telling you this. The United States had an agenda. And they knew that the American people would never, ever, ever accept another war. This is going to be hard for a lot of you to palate, but they knew that we would never accept another war. So a war was created through 9/11 to give the United States a reason to go to Iraq. So what happened once they got in Iraq? They got control of the oil fields. Because after they had decimated that place, after they killed all of those people, they immediately went in to seize the oil fields. BP came in, Halliburton came in, and some other oil companies came in. And you know what? We're sitting here in the United States thinking that this is a war on terror. But it was a war for something else. It was terror, all right. But it was terror for someone else. So, without being too specific now, I'm just going to appeal to your sense of good judgment and even common sense. We occupied another country through 9/11, or from that event taking place. We occupied another country. We took it over and we occupied it. The United States occupied Iraq. And what was their precious commodity there? Their oil, their petroleum. That was the commodity. That's what the United States wanted. It allowed them to place themselves in a strategic place in the Middle East. That's where they wanted to be. It's not the only place they wanted to be, but that's one of the key places they wanted to set up. And they did just that. So again, I want to say this. All of you that lost loved ones, may the Almighty continue to bless you, strengthen you, and encourage you. And I know it's difficult and even impossible for some, as it is, to still deal with the ravages of that incident these many years removed now. Still try as much as lie within you to be strong and to maintain. But let us all not just accept everything that's told to us for face value. I was taught when I was younger to never be afraid of challenging things. Don't just accept what someone tells you as being the truth, as much as you want to believe it. Oftentimes we find ourselves in a situation of cognizant dissonance, if you will, cognitive dissonance, where we have a belief system and we've held on to that belief system so long, if anyone challenges it, directly or indirectly, we automatically build up this wall, and then we can become very hostile because we don't want to believe that the belief system that we maintained for this period of time or these many years could be wrong. Could we be wrong about how we see our own so-called government? Could we be sleeping with the enemy and don't even know it? Why is it that this statement is in the presidential oath of office and in the oath of office of police officers and judges? I will protect this country against enemies, foreign and domestic. I will protect this country against enemies, foreign, that means outside of the country, and domestic, within. And now that's in their oath of office. Why is it there if it's not possible for it to happen? Is it possible to have the enemy within as opposed to without? You answer that question. Do yourself a favor. Stop just falling for anything. Investigate everything. Question everything. If someone says that because of this evidence, we don't believe that that's true, you owe it to yourselves, whoever you are listening to me right now, you owe it to yourselves to at least do some due diligence, some research, and find out if it has any credibility or any credence. You owe it to yourself. But it is a shame that when someone tells you something, you just take it for face value and you just run with it. Because if you find out later on that it was not true, you're devastated. When you could have avoided that in the first place by doing the research. I mean no harm to you. As I forestated, it's not my intent to make anyone angry, to make anyone upset, to demean or degrade anything that occurred during 9/11. Because it was indeed a tragic loss of life. Any life, for that matter. And if you've ever seen any body of work that I've ever done on video or otherwise, you would know that that's not who I am. But who I am is this. I believe in the truth. And I learned a long time ago, when you tell the truth will make you free. Apparently, some people don't want to be free. This is Brother Teacher. Let me know your thoughts. I'll see you in the next video. So long.